Good afternoon. Welcome, family and friends. I can hardly contain my excitement. Today, Paul Robeson returns to the banks permanently. On behalf of the Paul Robeson Centennial Committee, I thank you for bringing your enthusiasm, love, and commitment to this most sacred space. As a liberated gospel choir proudly honors Paul's remarkable life and legacy with singing the national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won, won, is won.
Thank you to the Liberated Gospel Choir. And now it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Dr. Gregory Smith Robeson. Pardon me, the Reverend Dr. Gregory Robeson Smith. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, today, we come to celebrate the magnitude of the life and achievement of a Rutgers alumni, the first African-American graduate, Paul Robeson, a person of staggering proportions. As an athlete, as a scholar, as a linguist, as a well-renowned performing artist and statesman, who embodied in the excellence of his achievement the standard of a universal person and a Renaissance human being, whose extraordinary achievements in several different fields were extraordinarily taken individually and taken all together were unprecedented. He withstood the full weight of a massive campaign by our government and the mass media of the establishment to silence him. He challenged the racism in this country to its foundation and linked the liberation struggles of black people in America to all those of oppressed people everywhere who braved man that took nothing from nobody. We come today to this institution in appreciation of which it was an integral part of his beginnings. One of the first fighters of civil rights in the 20th century, a very vocal voice against lynching of African Americans when the silence of civil rights groups was deafening, one who refused to allow his success to obliterate the sufferings of other black Americans. Instead, he used his prestige and talents as weapons for the struggle for freedom. One who acted on his convictions while the racist right-wing establishment, led by governmental forces, launched a powerful offensive against this black man. One of the very few people who always cast light and warmth on those near to him, but never a shadow. He was not only a black, gifted, and militant, a fact admirably expressed by Mary McLeod Bethune as the tallest tree in the forest. We thank the Almighty for times such as this, and as we move forward celebrating the past, but charting the future. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our native land. Amen.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Barchi, Rutgers president, and it's just a true delight for me to be with here today on this wonderful occasion. It just seems like a few weeks ago that we were in the same place breaking ground, although I can remember that some of us were having trouble not fainting from the heat. This is a little bit preferable, but I want to be here to thank all of you who have supported this and made it possible. The Robeson family, Felicia McGinty, of course, who has been integral in doing this, the Robeson Centennial Committee, and especially the Rutgers African-American Alumni Alliance and the Rutgers Class of 1971, whose perseverance and continued push and, of course, financial support made this new plaza possible. There's no question, as you've just heard, that Paul Robeson is among the greatest of the hundreds of thousands of Rutgers alumni, simply one of the greatest. In fact, we may never see again so many talents combined in one person: a superior scholar, an all-American athlete, a world-renowned singer and actor, a spellbinding orator, and a passionate activist and humanitarian. Now, we have honored Paul Robeson as an individual before, and we will certainly do it again, and he has deserved it every time. But we also honor Paul Robeson today in a different context, and I'm going to take a little bit of a pivot here, because right now we are at a moment of reckoning in our 250 years as an institution of higher education. For the past several years, we have been confronting the difficult history of our own university's involvement in race and equality, going back to those founding days. We've been documenting where Rutgers has played a part in denying opportunity, or even worse, to people of color. And we haven't been shying from those facts. We've been publicizing them. We've been discussing them. We've been memorializing them. We've not been taking names off of things. We have been pointing out why they're there, and here's another thing you should know about our history and why it's so important. And I'm delighted to see Professor Gray White here today. You should know that the second volume of her book is coming out imminently, documenting that involvement in a totally dispassionate way. I believe that that's the way it should be done, and I'm so proud of the conversation that we've had about it. But it's appropriate to recognize Robeson in that context too, because Robeson didn't have an easy time here. I'll give you one shameful incident that you probably know, a time when the Rutgers administration made him sit on the bench for a football game because the opponent, Washington and Lee, refused to play against a team with a black man on the field. That injustice caused alumnus James Dixon Carr to write to the university president, who was then President Demarest, and rightly complained that Rutgers, and I'm quoting him now, prostituted her sacred principles that day. And a further quote, Rutgers laid her convictions upon the altar of compromise. So, to be clear, Robeson was far from unique in this context. As unique as he was as an individual, in this context, he was unfortunately one of many. He was not the only student mistreated because of the color of his skin. But here again, he provides a valuable point of focus. He provides a valuable opportunity for us to come together, consider what it meant to someone with his skills and his obvious talents, and relate that to what it meant to all those other folks who were trying to accomplish those same things at those times and before here at Rutgers. Consider, if you will, that we're marking the 100-year anniversary since Paul Robeson graduated, but we're also marking the 50-year celebration of the Conklin Hall takeover in Rutgers, Newark, that exposed our continued failure to extend educational opportunity to people of color. Today, 100 years since Robeson and 50 years since Conklin, we are a better and much more inclusive university. I think we can all agree to that, and we can all take pride in that. But there are still issues of social justice that have to be dealt with at Rutgers. There are issues that we must constantly work to improve upon. You don't get to declare victory on inequality. Now, this plaza is centrally located here in Vorhees Mall, as you can see, but at the same time, it's set away a little bit for quiet contemplation. I hope you can appreciate then when this building is no longer here, as it won't be at some time in the not too distant future, this will be immediately visible from College Avenue. And as you look across to the new vista along Seminary and Bishop here, it has a central location. The idea here is to keep this as a place where we can be quiet and introspective at the same time that we interact with our colleagues. We can look at the history here and think about what it means and take a moment to contemplate that. And hopefully we can provide that environment and emphasize what it means for that to be here. So let me just say this. The legacy of Paul Robeson a century later should include his heroics on the athletic field, his brilliance in the classroom, his commitment to equality and social justice, and his legendary career. But his legacy should also include our persistent commitment to make Rutgers more inclusive today, and more so for each new generation of students that comes to the banks. Now that would do proper justice to the memory of Paul Robeson. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As indicated in the program, my name is Claude White, and I have the privilege of serving as president of the class of 1971, which goes back a few years now in terms of the time that we spent on the banks. But this is certainly a great day. It's a great opportunity to share with you what has been a very interesting, close to 5 years now, Jim, in terms of this process of working on the Paul Robeson Plaza. And so the class is very proud. It is very honored to be able to have you here this afternoon. So I say to President Barchi, to Mayor Cahill from New Brunswick, and Dr. McGinty, and Chancellor Malloy, and all of you who are honored guests who are here this afternoon. This day marks a long-needed event in the history of Rutgers. And as I said, it represents a culmination of the class of 1971 as it relates to our 45th milestone campaign. But while you and I gather here today, we must recognize and appreciate the work of many whose untiring efforts and dedication made it possible for the class of 1971 to present to President Barchi and the Rutgers University this particular plaza. Indeed, the presentation is not only to Rutgers, but it's to the state of New Jersey, and it is to the world at large when you think of Paul Robeson, who was our fellow alumnus. It is particularly gratifying to me from a personal note because of the fact that Paul Robeson is in my family. And so I am so honored that we are able to do this today in recognition of his accomplishments. So it is with a great sense of gratitude that on behalf of the class of 1971, we are thankful for your presence here today, your support, and your participation in this event. Of particular note, I really have to thank Jim Savage, who was our campaign chair. It was because of Jim's steadfastness, his planning, the many emails, the many calls, the many meetings, and the discussions that took place, along with our committee, which is here, Rob Vance, Eugene Francis, I see Dr. Wayne. Yes, Larry, and I believe there was one other member of our committee, yes, Paul, who was here as well. And we had many, many meetings with Sydney. I think Sydney is here somewhere as well. Cindy Serchik. Yes, she was an invaluable resource for our committee as we went through this process. And we really cannot thank them enough in terms of what the efforts this committee went through in order to get where we are today. We also have to thank people like Dr. Ed Ransami in terms of what he did in helping us as we went through this process. Brian Clemson, who was so much involved in architecting the actual structure behind us. It was Brian who really led that whole process. And certainly Kendall Hall and the RAAA in terms of stepping up to the plate when this project became known to her and to the RAAA. And they just jumped right in. And as a result of their efforts, we were able to successfully raise the funds that were needed for this project. And lastly, I would certainly want to thank Susan Robeson, as well as Marilyn, her mother, and the time that they spent with Jim and I and Ed on occasion to help us work through this process of how we could best recognize the life and the legacy of Paul Robeson. And so we will be forever indebted to you and spending some afternoons with some Chinese food or whatever we had to eat in order to be able to work through this process. But the reality is, in time, what we say here today and your presence here today will soon be forgotten. But the result of what we've done here will live on and live on and live on. So the Rutgers community will long be able to remember the legacy of Paul Leroy Robeson. Not only the Rutgers community, but our nation and the world at large will be able to have a living testament to who Paul Robeson was. So as class president, I take pride in the efforts of our class, supported by certainly the RAAA, and many others of you who are sitting here today who contributed and made it possible for the construction of this Paul Robeson Plaza. President Barchi, this is our milestone gift, and it is the hope of the class of 1971 that the Paul Robeson Plaza will stand as a public and lasting tribute to the extraordinary life and legacy of Paul Leroy Robeson, and will serve to inspire future generations to stand up, to speak out for social injustice and human rights, with Paul Robeson as their model and their mentor. Thank you.
There's an old man called Mississippi, that's the old man that I'd like to be. What does he care if the world's got trouble? What does he care if the land is free? Old man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling. He keeps on rolling along. He don't plant potatoes, he don't plant cotton, and damn that planter is soon forgotten. But old man River, he just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that barge, lift that bale, get a little drunk, and you land in jail. I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. But old man River, he just keeps rolling on. Let me go away from the Mississippi. Let me go away from the white man boss. Show me that stream called the River Jordan. That's the old stream that I long to cross. Old man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling. Our old river forever keeps rolling.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Cahill. I am the mayor of the city of New Brunswick, and I am delighted to join with Councilman Kevin Egan and Superintendent of Schools in New Brunswick, Dr. Aubrey Johnson, representing the city and our public schools in this continued celebration of a man important to our community and certainly to the pages of our American history story. 100 years ago, Paul Robeson, an extraordinary student and athlete, graduated from Rutgers University and went out into the world to continue to live a full, influential, and accomplished life. The fame he enjoyed in music, acting, culture, politics, and civil rights sprang from the very education he received right here at our state university in our community of New Brunswick. It is a great source of pride to be able to count among the past residents of New Brunswick a man of Robeson's standing. We have taken great care to keep his legacy alive within our community. Nearly 700 New Brunswick students are learning and growing every day at our newly expanded and renovated Paul Robeson Community School for the Arts. In the very same neighborhood, we're celebrating the newly named Paul Robeson Boulevard, a lasting reminder of a remarkable man of our community and the many great things he went on to do. And our recently unveiled plans for the complete renovation of Feaster Park, located along Paul Robeson Boulevard and adjacent to the Paul Robeson Community School for the Arts, calls for its own Paul Robeson statue and plaza as part of an outdoor study area for our students to enjoy in the presence of a man who so valued education. His legacy flows through the lifeblood of our community, even in places where his name may not be immediately visible. It's through our unwavering commitment to education via New Brunswick Public Schools and indeed Rutgers University, and the network of partners committed to empowering our students at all age levels so that we may continue to inspire learners and promote the value of education. It's through our commitment to lifting up all of the residents of our community through housing, social services, advocacy, and outreach so all can live in a safe, productive, and peaceful lives. And when we celebrate our history of New Brunswick as a diverse community with more than 300 years of culture and heritage shaped by people from all over the world. So it is our pleasure to partner with Rutgers University on so many initiatives that affect our shared community. As students and non-students alike pass through this plaza and learn about the man Robeson was and the world was changed because of who he chose to be, they will have a great opportunity to see the power of education, commitment, and determination. Thank you, Dr. Barchi, for your continuing partnership of Rutgers University with the City of New Brunswick. Thank you, Dr. McGinty, and your team on the class of 1971 and all those involved for all the hard work that has made this centennial year such a success. It is inspiring to be able to bring the Robeson legacy to a new generation so that they may be inspired by a life that had such an indelible effect on the world. Thank you so very much.
It is thrilling to see so many people here. Thank you for coming. I would like to pay respect to my ancestors by acknowledging that we stand upon traditional Lenape land. This is Lenape Hawking, the homeland of the Lenape Nation. As many of you know, Paul Robeson's mother was of Lenape descent, so it is more than fitting that we offer our respect and gratitude, as is the tradition in the Lenape Nation, to the Lenape elders, past and present. For anyone who is listening to the lyrics of Old Man River, I just want to assure you that that song of despair, where he was singing, "I'm tired of living and scared of dying," he transformed that into a song of resistance and sang, "I must keep fighting until I'm dying." And he sang that with vigor until that time. So I am deeply moved to be part of this historic dedication. It's a magnificent tribute to my grandfather, and it beautifully captures the essence of his spirit and contributions. And there, to my knowledge, there is no other such public monument such as this. So, thank you. And it's so fitting that it comes as part of Rutgers' year-long celebration of the centennial of my grandfather's graduation, as you've heard, which is a remarkable and bold and challenging move on the part of the university. So I do commend President Barchi and Chancellor Malloy, and especially I'd like to thank Vice Chancellor McGinty, the entire Centennial Committee that works with her to make these things happen. Thank you. As well as Assistant Vice Chancellor Cifuentes and Assistant Vice Chancellor Whitney. They're doing so many things as well on the academic side. And so thank you all. I know I've left people out. Mayor Cahill, it's a thrill to be here. I missed you the last time. Last but not least, I think that's biblical, yeah? Okay. And of course, Kendall Hall and the Rutgers Black alumni, this would have never come together in the same way. But mostly, well, not mostly, I would like to say from the bottom of my heart that none of us would be here today without Jim Savage. His relentless, and I can testify to that, his relentless persistence and his inclusive and collaborative leadership and his passion and his just plain love for Paul Robeson conquered all the obstacles and got everyone through. Jim poured every ounce of his heart and soul for several years into making this plaza a reality. The sheer volume of work and effort that it took over, I thought it was over 3 years, but I'm hearing 5, I'm sure was overwhelming at times. But Jim, as we know, was not alone, and I would just like to once again call the names of the class of 71 committee who also made this possible and championed this project and raised the money, because Jim did not do this alone. But he was our fearless leader. So Claude White, you heard from, Wayne Goldman, Eugene Francis, Lawrence Perfetti, Rob Vance, Paul Vonderhayden, and Ronald Wilson, along with Professor Edward Ramsamy, chair of the Africana Studies Department, who was there the whole way. And that's how we met, which I'm so thrilled that we've gotten to know each other. But I would like to take a moment to honor my father, Paul Robeson Jr., who I wish he was here. It wasn't always easy bringing forth, this is the fruit of his labors, which often went unnoticed and scorned without receptivity. And so I do wish he was here. I'm sure in spirit, I know he is. And my mother is here, Marilyn Robeson. And I must say, I would not be able to do what I do without your love and your support. And wisdom, which comes tops. Can't get by without that. So inspired by today, let's consider what a legacy is. It's what we leave behind that people remember us by, but a living legacy is one that calls us to action to continue the work. What was so extraordinary about my grandfather was that the more successful, the more wealthy, the more famous, the more accomplished he became as a singer and an actor, the less focused he was on himself. And the more attuned he became to the suffering of others. And to him, all the success in the world was meaningless if it didn't benefit someone else. Celebrating Paul Robeson's legacy demands that we consider how to ensure his struggles and his sacrifices were not in vain. We cannot rest on our laurels. I know in my heart I do not do enough. So I know that all of us can indeed do more. A while back, I had the privilege of working with Haskell Wexler. If there are any film folks here, you know that name. He's one of the world's greatest cinematographers. And Haxler told me his mantra, and I never forgot it. Don't whine, just do it. So, to all the young people here, the history of change and social movements tells us that you are the ones that change the world. So, take charge of your life and our future. So with a spring in our step and inspired by this stunning gift from the class of '71, it's time to get busy and stay busy. The work is so in our face that we need to do, here and all over the world. My greatest hope is that students today strive to become global citizens who transcend boundaries and engage with the issues of peace and social justice in every corner of the globe. And like Paul, never fear to speak truth to power. My grandfather often said, I'm not free until we're all free. And he wasn't just talking about black folks. He was talking about every single person who walks on the planet Earth. Toni Morrison put it, the function of freedom is to free another. So thank you and peace and blessings. And I really am just so deeply moved to be here and be a part of this dedication today. Thank you.
We're here celebrating the life and legacy of Paul Robeson. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. My name is Chanel Jordan, and I am a class of 2019 graduate, and it is an honor to be a Centennial graduate. I think it is important that since commencement is pretty much a month away, that all of us who are closing this chapter in our life make sure that we're living in the legacy of Paul Robeson and also inspiring those coming after us to live in the legacy of Paul Robeson. So I want to engage all of you in how we can do so. Right by the door to my apartment, there's a bulletin board, and on it we keep a calendar pinned to the wall. We've had multiple calendars hang here, from the Obama calendar gifted to one of my roommates by her mother, to the corporate calendar gifted to my other roommate by her father, and currently the Black History calendar gifted to my roommate by her grandmother. Everywhere we go, there are calendars in the apartment. We have our own personal calendars in our rooms, our physical planners in our backpacks, our Google calendars on our phone, and a rip-off calendar on the counter with Women's History Month's facts. Everywhere we go, we are bombarded with the passage of time and its ability to move forward. As human beings, we are obsessed with the linear passage of time. We have calendars on our phones. We celebrate important milestones like birthdays and wedding anniversaries. And even this university has celebrated important milestones like its 250 years of educational excellence. And today, the centennial of Paul Robeson's graduation. We are so enraptured by the forward passage of time that we often forget the history that has allowed us to mark one more X on the calendar, to celebrate one more birthday and one more wedding anniversary, and today, to celebrate the life and legacy of Paul Robeson.
Paul Robeson was a Renaissance man in every sense of the word. He was a decorated athlete, a talented actor and musician, and an esteemed scholar who graduated as his class valedictorian. He would later go on to become a world-renowned figurehead as he traveled the country and the world, sharing his gift and bringing joy to many. Today, we celebrate the many achievements of Paul Robeson and his impact on the university and beyond. But we must not forget the events that shaped him into the activist we often neglect to remember him as. Robeson was the son of an escaped enslaved man who went on to attend an Ivy Tower institution whose own foundation was laid by an enslaved man. This man, who is now commemorated by the path leading up to Old Queens, known as Willow's Way. Upon entering this institution, Robeson dominated every sphere he entered, but not without challenge. Although he was a decorated athlete, he faced racism on and off the field, from physical aggression from his own teammates to other teams refusing to play a team that allowed a black man. Although he was a superb singer, he sang off campus for money and wasn't allowed to formally join the Glee Club because they were deemed white-only spaces. Although Robeson graduated the top of his class, he faced hardships in and out of the classroom. Later in his life, Robeson would attend law school, eventually move into acting, and establish himself as a jack of all trades. Robeson was multifaceted, but his identity as a black man would always impact how he was able to move in the world. Robeson knew that he had to take action. He would later join various civil and human rights groups, both domestically and internationally. This activism was not salient, and he was targeted and ostracized by the US government to the point where he died with the reputation of a black sheep, and his legacy of activism and excellence fell to the wayside to many. Until now. We come here to celebrate the life of Paul Robeson in all of its aspects: scholar, athlete, actor, singer, but most of all, global activist. As a student at Rutgers, Paul Robeson was also a member of Cap and Skull Senior Honor Society, of which I'm currently a member. Our motto is Spectrum Agendo, which roughly translates to, let us be judged by our actions. In every action that Robeson has taken, he has been judged, sometimes fairly, but most times unfairly. But I am honored to share this legacy with Paul Robeson and hope to continue this legacy of excellence, and as a service member of Cap and Skull, but more importantly, as a Scarlet Knight. To do so, Cap and Skull helped create the Knight's Call, which captures all of the characteristics that Robeson embodied and the characteristics that Scarlet Knights today exemplify. We are authentic, as Robeson was in upholding his black identity and activism during his time at Rutgers and beyond. We are inclusive, as Robeson was when he worked towards securing the civil and human rights of global denizens. We are responsible, as Robeson was when he meticulously and diligently worked to become an exemplary student and professional. We are engaged, as Robeson was in the issues that impacted him and the lives of marginalized communities and how to find lasting solutions. And finally, we are resilient. Robeson faced so much adversity, but he always rose above and was always able to remember his why: to give back to the world in hopes of making it a better place. When you find it difficult to adhere to these values, use the Robeson Plaza as a place of contemplation and introspection. When you need a place to find joy in the beauty of our university, use the Robeson Plaza to glance at the beauty of Old Queens and the students that make this university what it is. When you want to find your purpose, use the Robeson Plaza to sit and plan for what lays ahead. Use it to find joy, use it to experience sadness, Just use this location as a place to overcome your adversity and move yourself and others forward as Robeson would have. As I leave Rutgers and my own legacy behind, I hope that we remember the history and legacy that Robeson has left, and I challenge the university and its Scarlet Knights to move forward in our calendars while also remembering the history that has brought us here. I implore Rutgers University to use Robeson's legacy as a guideline for how we should serve the Rutgers community and the world beyond. I charge Scarlet Knights to live by the motto of Cap and Skull and to embody the Knight's call. Live authentically, live inclusively, live responsibly, be engaged, and remain resilient despite adversity. I leave you with these words from Robeson's 1919 commencement speech titled The New Idealism. We of the younger generation especially must feel a sacred call to which lies before us. What lies before us are more days to be marked by X's, but do not waste them. Spend them immersed in the legacy of Paul Robeson. Thank you.
Our students. So now I'm going to ask the class of 1971 Executive Committee, President Barchi, Mayor Cahill, Claude White, our guest here, the Robeson family, to join us on the stage as we cut the ribbon. Professor Ramsamy, please join us. As they're coming forward, I want to let you know that immediately after cutting the ribbon, there'll be a reception in the Zimmerly. I hope that you'll take time to walk the path on the way to the Zimmerly, and you will see lawn signs that our students have placed on the grass that speak to how they've decided to walk in the footsteps of Robeson. Thank you.
Okay. Now, actually, you can smoosh over a little bit more. Most important thing is actually look up when you're doing this. So rather than, you want to look at me though. Okay, look up though. Look up this way. Hold on. Do it. Good job. Now, look up. Let's go. Look up. 3, 2, 6.